License and registration, now.
Good evening, officer. Why was I stopped?
You rolled that stop sign.
I'm certain I stopped completely.
Step out of the vehicle.
Is there a reason I need to?
Step out, now.
All right. Thank you.
Keep your hands where I can see them.
They are.
The body camera footage begins at 22:14:10 on February 16, 2026. In the top right corner of the frame, the timestamp ticks forward in silence. Below it, blue and red light sweeps across a quiet suburban street, painting parked cars and bare tree branches in alternating color. An officer approaches a dark sedan from behind, one hand already resting on his belt before he has reached the driver's window. Inside the car, a man's hands rise slowly, both of them. Palms out, fingers spread, raised to a height that does not look like surprise. It looks like memory. Officer Kyle Brennan has no idea what he has just started. He does not know that the man behind the wheel spent 28 years learning exactly what Brennan is doing wrong. He does not know about the dash cam recording from the front. He does not know that within 4 months, he will be sitting across a conference table from a city attorney, watching this same footage play on a laptop screen, while his union rep quietly advises him not to speak. He does not know any of this yet. He taps the window with his flashlight, not a knock, a demand. Terrence Whitfield joined the FBI at 34, which was late by the Bureau's standards. Before that, he had taught high school history for 6 years, coached junior varsity basketball, and spent 2 years working as a paralegal at a civil rights law firm in the same city where he was born. He was not the kind of man who decided on a career in federal law enforcement because he wanted to carry a gun. He decided because he had watched, for the better part of a decade, what happened when the people responsible for enforcing the law were never held accountable to it. He was good at the work, methodical, patient in a way that made him effective in long investigations and difficult interviews. He rose through the Bureau steadily, not meteoric, not celebrated, but consistent. He worked public corruption cases for 11 years. He spent 4 years in a financial crimes unit. His last assignment before retirement was a supervisory role overseeing civil rights investigations, which meant that for the final chapter of his federal career, Terrence Whitfield spent his days building cases against law enforcement officers who violated the constitutional rights of the people they were supposed to protect. He retired on a Thursday in the spring of 2022. There was a small ceremony. A plaque. A deputy director who shook his hand and mispronounced his last name. He drove home in the same car he'd driven for 6 years, stopped for groceries, and was in bed by 10. He was not naive about what retirement meant. He was still a black man in America. He understood that his credentials, his history, his 28 years of federal service, none of it lived on the outside of his body. None of it was visible through a car window at 10 p.m. He knew this. He just hadn't lived it in a while. Not this directly, not this close. On the night of February 16, 2026, Whitfield was driving home from dinner at his daughter's house on the east side of the city. He had stayed later than planned. She had made a lamb stew that required a second bowl, and his grandson had wanted to show him something on his tablet, a video about deep-sea fish that had somehow consumed 40 minutes. He left around 9:45. He was on familiar roads he had driven for 4 decades, through a neighborhood he had watched change and gentrify, and change again. He was wearing a jacket his daughter had given him for Christmas. Dark green, heavy, the kind with a Sherpa collar. He was listening to nothing. He was thinking about the lamb stew and the deep-sea fish, and whether his grandson was old enough to be interested in scuba diving. He was not thinking about what was behind him. Until the lights came on. Officer Kyle Brennan had been on the force for 7 years. 2 commendations, a photo on the department's community outreach page from a neighborhood cleanup event in 2023. 0 sustained complaints, which was not the same thing as 0 complaints, a distinction that would become relevant later. He had a habit, documented in 2 separate civilian reports that had each been reviewed and closed without action, of initiating traffic stops in the city's predominantly black residential corridors for stated violations that dashcam or body camera footage later failed to confirm. a lane departure, a rolling stop, a light that witnesses did not recall flickering. The complaints used different language but described the same sequence. Stopped without clear cause, questioned beyond the scope of the stop, searched with or without consent, leased without citation or apology. None of the complaints had been sustained. In each case, the reviewing officer had noted that the dashcam angle was inconclusive, or that the stop was within acceptable discretionary parameters, or that the complainant had not clearly invoked their right to refuse consent. Brennan had never been formally reprimanded. His personnel file was clean. This is not a contradiction. This is how the system is designed to function. On the night of February 16th, he was running a patrol shift through the Millbrook corridor, a route that his own department's data, later pulled during civil litigation, would show he ran 34% more frequently during evening hours than his similarly assigned colleagues. He activated his lights behind Whitfield's vehicle at 22:14. His stated reason, recorded in his incident log, was a lane departure. Whitfield's dashcam footage, recorded simultaneously, showed no lane departure. The window came down. Brennan's flashlight moved to Whitfield's face immediately, not to the documents, not to the registration area. The face. This is the first thing Whitfield noted in the written complaint he would file 11 days later. Not the light itself, but its direction. License, registration, proof of insurance. Keep both hands where I can see them. Whitfield complied. Both hands were already visible. He reached for the glove compartment slowly, narrating the movement the way he had been trained to do years ago when instructing new agents in field procedures. Reaching for the glove compartment now. Old habit. It came out quieter than he intended, almost to himself. Brennan did not acknowledge it. What was the reason for the stop? Whitfield asked, his voice even. Brennan said something about a lame drift, took the documents, shined the light in Whitfield's face once more, and walked back to his patrol car. Whitfield sat with both hands on the steering wheel. He watched in the rearview mirror. He breathed deliberately. He noted the time on the dashboard clock, 22:17. He noted the street. He noted that there were no other vehicles in immediate sight. He thought about the lamb stew. He thought about his grandson. He waited. 12 minutes passed. Brennan returned to the window. He was holding Whitfield's registration and license. He asked to see the registration again, the one he was holding. He said he wanted to double-check the VIN. He asked Whitfield to step out of the vehicle. Whitfield asked, calmly and clearly, whether he was being detained. Brennan said he was not being detained. Then he asked Whitfield to step out of the vehicle again, in the same tone, as if the first question and the second request had occurred in separate conversations. Whitfield stepped out. He kept his hands visible. He did not make any sudden movements. He had spent the better part of 3 decades on the other side of exactly this kind of encounter, and he knew what happened when men in his position did not manage their movements precisely. He knew what gave officers like Brennan permission to escalate. He did not give it. Brennan walked around the car slowly, shining his flashlight through each window. He asked about a bag on the back seat. Whitfield said it was his. Brennan asked him to open it. "Do you have a basis for searching my belongings?" Whitfield asked. It was a simple question, a procedurally correct question, a question that anyone who had studied the Fourth Amendment would recognize immediately. Brennan paused for just a moment, in a way the body camera captured, but that would later be described in the internal review as inconclusive. Then he said that he had a basis if he said he had a basis. Whitfield opened the bag. A water bottle, a towel. Brennan pushed the contents around with one hand. He asked where Whitfield was coming from. Whitfield told him. He asked where Whitfield was going. Whitfield told him. He asked where Whitfield was going. Whitfield told him. He asked if Whitfield was from around here. And then, when Whitfield said he had been born in this city and lived here his entire life, Brennan made a sound that was not quite disbelief and not quite dismissal, but occupied the space between them. He asked to see inside the trunk. "Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" Whitfield asked. It was the fourth procedurally specific question he had asked in under 10 minutes. Later, in the Internal Affairs Review, the officer assigned to the case would note that Whitfield had demonstrated an unusual familiarity with police procedure. This observation appeared in the file without follow-up, like a sentence that forgot its own point. Whitfield opened the trunk. Spare tire, jack, first aid kit. Brennan spent several minutes going through it. He left things scattered. Then he told Whitfield to turn around and put his hands behind his back. Am I under arrest? What is the charge? Suspicious activity. Failure to comply with an officer's investigation. The handcuffs went on at 22:41, according to the body camera timestamp, 27 minutes after the stop began. 27 minutes in which Whitfield had answered every question, opened every compartment, produced every document requested, and complied with every instruction given. The charge was paperwork. Brennan needed a reason, and so he wrote one. Whitfield felt the metal close around his wrists. He noted how it felt. Not with surprise, he had put handcuffs on people for years, but with something he would later describe, in his written complaint, only as a kind of clarity. The body camera footage shows him nodding slightly at the moment of contact, though there is no one to nod to and nothing to confirm. It is the nod of a man deciding something. He was placed in the back of the patrol car. The door closed. It did not open from the inside. Brennan got in the front seat and began the drive to the station. And then he started talking. What Brennan said during the 15-minute drive to the station is preserved in its entirety on the body camera footage. The Internal Affairs Review transcript runs to 4 pages. It includes references to you people, to your kind, to the neighborhood being different, before certain types started moving through it. It includes a sustained monologue about attitude, about black men who think they know their rights, about cleaning up the area, about dozens of prior stops that had gone the same way. Brennan said all of this to a man with 28 years of federal civil rights investigative experience, without knowing who he was, without knowing the dash cam was running, without knowing that every word was being captured in audio that would later be reviewed by an attorney, an internal affairs officer, a federal civil rights investigator, and eventually the plaintiff's legal team in a civil suit. Whitfield said nothing during the drive. He sat with his hands cuffed behind him and let Brennan talk. He stared at the cage partition between the front and back seat. He thought about all the people who had sat in this position without knowing what he knew, without having the language or the leverage or the credentials that were, even now, doing him no immediate good whatsoever. The car pulled into the station parking lot at 22:56. The station was busy. A Friday night, late, officers moving through the lobby, desk staff processing paperwork, a few people sitting in the waiting area. Brennan walked Whitfield through the main entrance toward the booking area. Nobody looked twice. A man in handcuffs being walked through a police station on a Friday night was not a noteworthy event. Then Whitfield stopped walking. Officer Brennan. His voice was different, not louder, different in register, in weight. The voice of someone who has spent years giving instructions in rooms where compliance was expected. I need you to stop and listen to me. Something in it made Brennan pause. It made several nearby officers turn and look. Whitfield reached into his jacket pocket with both cuffed hands, slowly, deliberately, in the way that a man with 28 years of field experience understands must be done in a room full of officers, and produced a credentials wallet. His retired FBI identification. He held it up. Brennan looked at it. He looked at Whitfield's face. He looked back at the credentials. He did not say anything for a moment. Then he said, quietly, "Who are you?" "My name is Terrence Whitfield." I am a retired special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I have 28 years of service, and I need you to remove these handcuffs right now. One of them recognized Whitfield from a community liaison event 2 years prior and went pale. Brennan's hands were not steady as he reached for his keys. The cuffs came off at 22:59, according to the timestamp. Whitfield rubbed his wrists. He looked at Brennan for a long moment. He said nothing further to him that night. He asked to speak with the watch commander. Sergeant Delgado arrived within 10 minutes. He was professional, thorough, and careful with language in the way that people are careful when they understand they are in a situation that will be reviewed. He did not ask Brennan to explain himself in Whitfield's presence. He did not use the word racial or profiling or misconduct. He expressed that the department would want to ensure this was handled properly, that he was sorry for any confusion, that Whitfield's service was respected and appreciated. He shook Whitfield's hand. He offered him a ride home. Whitfield declined. Brennan was not told to stop working that night. He finished his shift at 6 a.m. Whitfield drove home in his own car, retrieved from the side of the road where it had been left. He pulled into his driveway at 11:47 p.m. He sat in the car for a while. His daughter called at 11:52. She had expected him by 10:30. He told her traffic had been bad. He did not tell her what had happened, not that night. He went inside. He sat at his kitchen table. He was 62 years old. He had spent 28 years in federal law enforcement. He had built cases against officers who had done to other people what had just been done to him. He had read the reports. He had interviewed the victims. He had understood it, intellectually and professionally, for decades. Knowing a thing and living inside it are not the same distance apart. He sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then he went to bed. He filed the complaint on February 27th, 11 days later. He wrote it himself, using the language of someone who knows exactly which words carry administrative weight. He attached his dashcam footage, a timeline accurate to the minute, a citation of the specific departmental policy provisions he believed had been violated, and a reference to the relevant federal statute governing unlawful search and seizure. He received an automated confirmation email. The Internal Affairs Review was opened. An officer was assigned to the case. He called Whitfield, was courteous and professional, took notes, and told him the process typically took 60 to 90 days. Brennan was not placed on administrative leave during the review period. He continued to patrol the Millbrook corridor. The dashcam footage was reviewed. The Internal Affairs officer described it in the case file as showing Brennan. An interaction consistent with standard stop procedure, with some noted ambiguity around the initiating violation and the consent to search sequence. The body camera audio, the 15 minutes of recorded remarks during the drive to the station, was described as troubling in content and under further review. 38 days after the complaint was filed, Whitfield received a letter from the city's legal department. The department had retained outside counsel. They were prepared to discuss resolution of the matter. The initial offer was $22,500. Whitfield's attorney, a civil rights litigator he had known for 20 years, a woman who had been in this room before, sent back a counter. The final settlement was $95,000. After attorney fees of $31,200, Whitfield received $63,800. He did not consider this a victory. He considered it a number on a check. The check cleared. He put it in a savings account he had been adding to for his grandson's education fund. He did not tell his grandson where the money came from. The settlement was accompanied by a non-admission clause, meaning the city did not acknowledge that anything improper had occurred. This is standard. This is almost always standard. Brennan resigned before the termination hearing. His union negotiated the terms of his departure, which included a neutral reference letter for future employment, and the removal of the Internal Affairs case from the summary portion of his personnel file, though the underlying record remained. He left the department in late April. By August of the same year, he had relocated to a neighboring state and taken a position as a shift supervisor for a private security contractor at a regional logistics warehouse. The position did not require a law enforcement certification. It paid less. He took it. The department issued no public statement about his departure. His name did not appear in any press release. A local journalist submitted a records request for information about his separation from the department and received a response citing personnel record confidentiality provisions under state law. The journalist published a brief follow-up noting the records request had been denied. The article received 11 shares and was not picked up by any other outlet. No criminal charges were filed. The federal civil rights referral, made by Whitfield's attorney to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, was logged, reviewed, and returned with a letter stating that the division had determined the matter did not rise to the threshold for federal prosecution. The threshold, it did not rise to it. This is not the same as saying nothing wrong occurred. This is not a distinction that appears in the letter Whitfield received. The formal complaint was resolved 4 months after it was filed. The determination partially sustained. One finding of improper search procedure. No finding on the initiating stop. No finding on the language recorded during the patrol car ride, on grounds that the body camera audio, while concerning in tone, could not be conclusively linked to the stop decision itself. This means something happened. It does not specify who was responsible for it. It does not require that anything change. The department implemented a new body camera review protocol in the quarter following the resolution. The protocol requires that footage from any stop resulting in a complaint be reviewed within 72 hours by a designated supervising officer. The protocol was described in an internal memo as a proactive step towards strengthening accountability. The memo was distributed to all supervisors. It was not distributed to the public. Whitfield still drives the same car. He still takes his grandson to Saturday basketball, still stops for groceries on the way home, still takes the same routes through the city he was born in and has lived in for 62 years. From the outside, nothing has changed. From the inside, he checks his mirrors differently now. Not with fear exactly, but with attention, the deliberate, managed attention of someone who has recalibrated what ordinary means. He has a phrase he uses when driving alone, almost unconsciously now, a running narration, signal checked, speed 32, hands visible on wheel. He is rehearsing for a stop that may or may not come. He is making himself legible in advance. He moved his retired federal ID to the front of his wallet, not the back, where it sat for 4 years collecting almost no use. The front, the first thing visible when the wallet opens. He has thought about what that reorganization means. He has thought about it more than he expected to, more than seems proportional to the physical act of moving a card 2 slots forward in a leather wallet. He has not arrived at a comfortable conclusion. His daughter knows the full story now. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat quietly for a moment. Then she said, "I'm glad you're okay." She did not say he had won. She did not say the system had worked. She said she was glad he was okay, which is a different kind of sentence. And they both understood the difference. His former colleague, the one he told in the early days after the stop, eventually sent him a text after the settlement was announced. It said, "Is that it?" Whitfield read it twice. He typed back, "That's it." His colleague responded with nothing. No follow-up. Just the silence of someone who already knew the answer and had asked anyway, maybe hoping it would be different this time. Kyle Brennan did not go to prison. He did not lose his pension, which had vested before his resignation. He did not face criminal charges. He did not issue a public apology. He moved to another state and took a job supervising a shift of private security workers at a warehouse outside a mid-sized city. He is, by all available information, employed. He is, by all available information, fine. The people who filed complaints against him before February 16, 2026, the older woman questioned for 20 minutes about her destination, the young man searched on a public sidewalk, the family startled on the way home from a grocery run, Those complaints remain on record as closed, unsubstantiated, resolved. They do not appear in any settlement calculation. They do not appear in any public accounting of what happened. They are in a file. The file is in a system. The system moves forward. There is a version of this story that ends differently. In that version, the body camera audio goes viral. Brennan is charged. The department issues a sweeping reform. Community members who had filed unsubstantiated complaints see their cases reopened and resolved in their favor. Whitfield stands at a podium and speaks about accountability, and his words are reported and remembered and acted upon. That version exists. You have probably seen it. It is satisfying in the way that closure is satisfying, the way that a door shutting firmly feels better than one left unsustained. In this version, a man with 28 years of federal law enforcement experience was stopped on a road he had driven for 40 years, detained without cause, subjected to an unauthorized search, driven to a police station in handcuffs, and listened to a 15-minute recorded monologue that demonstrated exactly why it happened. He filed a complaint. He hired an attorney. He settled for $63,800 after fees. He moved his ID to the front of his wallet. The officer who stopped him resigned and found other employment. The system processed the complaint and continued. The question that Terrence Whitfield has not stopped turning over, not since he sat in his driveway at 11:47 p.m. in a jacket his daughter gave him for Christmas, is not whether what happened to him was wrong. He knows it was wrong. He has known what wrong looks like for 28 years, in detail, in case files, in testimony. The question is simpler and harder than that. The question is, if it happened to him, with everything he knew, with every credential he held, with every procedurally correct word he said, and every careful movement he made, and every form he filed in exactly the right language, then what does that mean for every person who sat in that same back seat, without any of it? He does not have an answer that feels adequate to the question. He is not sure one exists. He checks his mirrors, keeps his speed at 32, signals early, and drives home.